She lent her last $10 to a stranger at the train station, not knowing he was a millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. It was a gray March evening, the kind that presses low against the city and makes every breath taste like rain. The train station was nearly empty, its fluorescent lights flickering over wet concrete. Emily stood near the edge of the platform, clutching her worn purse close. Her fingers were numb from the cold, her shoes soaked through. She checked the cracked screen of her phone again, 8:43 p.m., and sighed. Her interview was early the next morning, miles away, and this was the last train that could get her there. Inside her pocket was everything she had left, one crumpled $10 bill. Just enough for a sandwich after the trip, just enough to feel human for one more night. The speaker crackled with static as a voice echoed, "Next departure in 15 minutes." She exhaled, trying to push down the hunger curling in her stomach. That's when she heard a hesitant voice behind her. "Excuse me, ma'am." She turned. A man stood under the flickering lamp. His jacket was thin, soaked through, and his beard looked several days old. Rain dripped from his hair onto his collar as he rubbed his hands together, shivering. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I had my wallet stolen. I just need $10 for a ticket home. I swear I'll pay you back." Emily froze. The only sound was the rain tapping against the metal roof. $10. Her last $10. Every instinct told her to walk away. People lied all the time. But something about his eyes, blue, tired, sincere, made her pause. "Can't you call someone?" she asked. He shook his head. "No phone. No one answers anyway." He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hid pain. Emily looked down at her purse, then back at him. Her pulse quickened. "How do I know you're not lying?" she pressed. His shoulders sank. "You don't. But I promise, I just want to go home." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The train rumbled faintly in the distance. Then Emily reached into her pocket, feeling the crumpled bill between her fingers. "This is insane," she muttered. But she pulled it out anyway and extended her hand. "I don't know why," she said quietly, "but I believe you." He stared at the bill as if it were something sacred before taking it gently. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. She forced a smile. "Just get home safe, okay?" He nodded, clutching the money tight. The train screeched into the station, its brakes hissing. Before she could say another word, he turned and boarded, vanishing into the crowd. A gust of cold air hit her face as the doors closed. She stood there, drenched, watching the train pull away, her reflection flickering on the wet glass. Somewhere inside that train was a stranger who now carried her last $10. She didn't know his name. She didn't know if she'd ever see him again, but for reasons she couldn't explain, her heart felt both heavier and strangely lighter all at once. The next announcement echoed through the empty station, calling for another train, her train. Emily took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped forward, unaware that her small act of kindness had just changed the course of her life forever. The morning after that rain-soaked night, Emily woke up shivering on the edge of her small rented room. The ceiling leaked a thin line of water into a metal bowl she had placed there weeks ago. Her alarm buzzed weakly on the cracked screen of her phone. Today was supposed to be her big chance, the job interview she had dreamed of for months. She got dressed in the same gray skirt and wrinkled blouse she had washed by hand the night before, slipped on her still damp shoes, and whispered to her reflection, "You can do this." The streets outside were slick with mud. Her stomach growled as she hurried toward the bus stop, clutching her purse close. She had skipped breakfast because there was nothing left to eat. When the bus driver asked for exact change, she froze. She had nothing. The last of her cash was gone with that stranger on the train. "I am sorry, miss," the driver said flatly. "No cash, no ride." Emily nodded, her cheeks burning, and started walking instead. The wind bit through her thin coat. She walked for nearly 40 minutes until the tall glass building finally came into view, shimmering against the dull sky. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and expensive perfume. She straightened her blouse, hoping no one would notice the tear near her sleeve, and approached the receptionist's desk. I am here for the 10 o'clock interview, she said softly. The receptionist barely glanced up. Name? Emily Walker. The woman typed quickly, then frowned. You are late. Mr. Graham had another meeting. You will need to reschedule. Emily's heart sank. Please, I tried to get here on time. The buses, I am sorry, the receptionist interrupted, her tone polite but final. You can email human resources. Emily forced a small nod. Thank you. As she turned to leave, the polished floors seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of her. Outside, the cold hit like a wall. She stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by people who moved with purposemen in suits, women with hot coffee, laughter spilling from passing taxis. For a long moment, she could not move. Then she did what she always did. She kept walking. By the time she reached her apartment building, her legs ached. The landlord was waiting by her door, arms crossed. Rent was due 3 days ago, he said. I know, Emily replied, voice shaking. I am waiting for my paycheck. He sighed. I cannot keep making exceptions. Someone else is ready to take this room. Please, just 2 more days, she begged. But his eyes said no. She packed her few belongings into a worn backpack that night. 2 shirts, a sketchbook from college, an old photo of her mother. She sat on the floor, staring at the single window that overlooked a narrow alley. The city lights shimmered far away, cold and unreachable. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. The next evening, she found herself in the public library downtown. The air smelled like dust and old paper. A security guard gave her a tired smile as she curled up in the corner between the nonfiction shelves. The chair creaked under her as she tried to rest, her backpack clutched tight. The hum of the fluorescent lights above was oddly soothing. For the first time that day, she let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. When the guard tapped her shoulder at midnight and whispered, "We are closing," she nodded quietly and stepped out into the night. The park across the street was empty, except for a bench glistening with dew. She sat down, pulled her coat tight, and looked up at the cloudy sky. Somewhere out there, a man with kind blue eyes was on a train heading home with her last $10. She wondered if he made it. She wondered if he even remembered her. But deep down, despite everything, she hoped he did. Because believing that someone, somewhere, remembered her kindness was the only thing keeping her heart warm in the cold city night. Days blurred into each other like rain on glass. Emily spent her mornings at the library, her afternoons wandering the city in search of job postings, and her nights in the park beneath the dim streetlight. The soles of her shoes were nearly worn through, and her hands stayed cold no matter how tightly she wrapped her coat around herself. Sometimes she would stop outside the bakery on 7th Avenue just to smell the bread and remember what warmth felt like. Hunger gnawed at her, but pride kept her from begging. One afternoon, as she sat on the library steps trying to charge her dead phone from an outdoor outlet, an older woman approached. She wore a faded red scarf and carried a bag of groceries that looked too heavy for her thin arms. "You look hungry, dear," the woman said kindly. Emily blinked, embarrassed. "I am fine, thank you." "Nonsense," the woman replied, pulling a small paper bag from her tote. "Here, it is just a sandwich. I made extra." Emily hesitated before taking it. "Thank you," she whispered. "I am Ruth." "Emily." Ruth smiled. "Well, Emily, if you ever need a hot meal, come by St. Mary's Soup Kitchen on Tuesday evenings. Tell them Ruth sent you." That night, Emily unwrapped the sandwich under the park light. The bread was soft, the ham salty and real. It tasted like home. For the first time in weeks, she felt full. The next Tuesday, she followed Ruth's advice. The soup kitchen smelled of coffee and onions, voices echoing through the large hall. Volunteers in aprons moved between tables, serving steaming bowls of stew to a line of people that stretched out the door. Emily stood near the back, nervous but grateful. When it was her turn, a man ladled soup into her bowl and smiled. "First time here?" She nodded. "Ruth sent me." "Ah, Ruth. She sends us all the good souls." Emily sat at a corner table, sipping the soup slowly, letting its warmth settle into her chest. Around her, people laughed. Some prayed. Some simply ate in silence. It was not glamorous, but it was human. Halfway through her meal, a sudden hush rippled through the room. The volunteers straightened, whispers spreading like wind. Emily turned to see why and froze. At the entrance stood a tall man in a navy suit, shaking hands with one of the organizers. His presence drew every eye in the hall. He looked familiar, the same dark hair, the same steady blue eyes. Her breath caught. It was him, the stranger from the train station, the man she had given her last $10 to. But now, he looked nothing like the desperate traveler she remembered. His posture was confident, his watch gleamed under the fluorescent light, and the volunteers greeted him as if he were someone important. She set her spoon down slowly, her heart pounding in disbelief. The man began walking through the hall, thanking the staff, asking questions, his voice calm but warm. When his gaze swept the room, it paused on her. Recognition flashed across his face. He excused himself from the group and walked toward her table. Emily's hands trembled as he approached. "You," she whispered before she could stop herself. He smiled gently. "I hoped I would find you one day." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. He took a seat across from her, lowering his voice. "My name is David Carter," he said. "I owe you a thank you." Her heart hammered. "I do not understand. You said you needed money for a ticket." "I did," he admitted, his expression softening. "But I was not stranded. I was testing something. I wanted to see what kindness looked like when there was nothing to gain." "You gave me your last $10, Emily. You did not even ask for my name." Emily stared at him, speechless. "Who are you really?" she whispered. "I am the founder of the Carter Foundation," he replied quietly. "We run community programs across the city, including this one. I came tonight because I needed to look someone in the eye and say thank you for reminding me what decency still looks like." Emily blinked back tears, unsure if she should be angry or grateful. David smiled again, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small envelope. "You gave me this," he said, showing her the $10 bill she had handed him weeks ago, now pressed flat and sealed in plastic. "I kept it as a reminder. And now, I think it is time it comes full circle." He placed the envelope gently on the table between them. "Tomorrow, come to this address. I have something for you." She looked down, reading the embossed card inside. "Carter Foundation Headquarters, downtown Manhattan." Emily looked up, still dazed. "Why me?" David's smile widened slightly. "Because you believed a stranger. And maybe it is time someone believes in you." He stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and gave a small nod before leaving. Emily sat frozen, staring at the $10 bill that had somehow found its way back to her, unaware that her life was about to change again in ways she could not yet imagine. Emily barely slept that night. She kept the envelope on the pillow beside her, as if it might disappear if she looked away. The sound of rain tapping against the library windows reminded her of the night she met him, the stranger who was no stranger at all. By sunrise, her nerves were a storm. She washed her face in the library restroom, tied her hair back, and straightened her blouse as best as she could. The address on the card led her to a tall glass building downtown, its mirrored doors reflecting a city she had only ever seen from afar. She hesitated at the entrance, surrounded by people in suits moving with purpose, then took a deep breath and stepped inside. The lobby was vast, polished marble under her worn shoes, and a chandelier glittered overhead. A receptionist looked up with a polite smile. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" I think so," Emily said, handing over the card. The woman's eyes widened slightly. "Ah, Mr. Carter asked us to expect you. Please, take the elevator to the 20th floor." Emily's heart pounded as the elevator doors closed, the soft hum rising with her anxiety. When they opened, she stepped into a quiet hallway lined with art. At the end was a set of glass doors, marked Times Carter Foundation. Asterisk. A man in a charcoal suit approached, offering a kind smile. "Miss Walker? Mr. Carter is waiting for you." She followed him into a spacious office where sunlight poured across the floor-to-ceiling windows. David Carter stood by the window, hands in his pockets, the city skyline glowing behind him. He turned when he heard her. "Emily," he said warmly, "you came." "I was not sure if I should," she admitted, clutching her bag. "I did not know what this was." He gestured toward a chair. "Please sit. I want to explain." She sat stiffly, unsure if she should be there at all. David leaned against his desk, his tone calm but sincere. "When I went undercover at the train station, I was trying to understand the people we are supposed to help. I saw too many reports, too many numbers, but no faces. That night I learned more in 5 minutes from you than from any report I have read." Emily frowned. "I did not do anything. It was just $10. "It was everything," he said softly. "You gave it when you had nothing left. That is not charity. That is faith." His words made her chest tighten. "Why tell me this?" David smiled faintly. Because I want to offer you a job. Here, at the foundation. She blinked. A job? Assistant coordinator. You would work with our outreach team, planning programs, visiting shelters, organizing drives. You would be paid fairly, of course. And I will make sure you have housing until you get back on your feet. Emily shook her head, stunned. You do not even know me. I know enough, he said. I know you care. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the distant hum of the city below. Emily looked at the framed photographs on the wall, volunteers handing out blankets, children smiling at food drives, workers building homes. She saw hope in every image, and for the first time in a long while, she wanted to be part of something again. Why me? She whispered. Because you reminded me of the kind of person I wanted to be, he said simply. Emily exhaled shakily, emotion catching in her throat. I do not know if I am qualified. You will learn, David said with a reassuring smile. We will start small. I just need you to show up. The rest we will figure out together. She nodded slowly, tears threatening to fall. Thank you. Do not thank me, he said. Just promise you will keep that $10 spirit alive. He extended his hand. Emily hesitated for a second, then shook it. His grip was steady, warm, grounding. Welcome to the Carter Foundation, he said. When she left the building an hour later, the world outside looked different. The same city streets she had trudged through now glimmered with possibility. She held the ID badge they had printed for her, a simple plastic card with her name. Emily Walker, Assistant Coordinator. For the first time in months, she smiled without forcing it. Somewhere above, on the 20th floor, David watched from his office window, the faintest smile on his lips. For both of them, it was not just a new job or a second chance. It was the quiet beginning of something that neither of them could yet name, but both were meant to find. The weeks that followed felt almost unreal for Emily. Each morning she took the bus downtown to the tall glass building she had once been afraid to enter. Now, her ID badge swung lightly from her neck as she walked through the lobby, greeted by the smell of fresh coffee and the hum of busy conversations. At the Carter Foundation, she was no longer invisible. Her desk sat near the wide windows overlooking the park, and every day she learned something new. The team was kind, the work meaningful, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like her life had purpose again. Her first project was simple: help organize a food drive for the upcoming holidays. David stopped by her desk one morning, a cup of coffee in hand. How are you settling in? He asked. She smiled nervously, trying not to break the printer. He chuckled, handing her the cup. You are doing great. Everyone says you have a way with people. I just talk to them, she said softly. Sometimes that is all people need. That, he said, is exactly why you are here. Over the next few days, they worked closely together, reviewing donation lists, calling volunteers, planning outreach routes. David was not the arrogant executive she had imagined a millionaire would be. He was patient, attentive, sometimes even funny. But beneath his calm smile, Emily sensed a quiet sadness. Late one evening, as the office emptied, she noticed him staring out the window, lost in thought. Long day? She asked gently. He nodded. Sometimes I wonder if all this money, programs, numbers really changes anything. Emily hesitated, then said, It changed me. He turned toward her, his expression softening. Then maybe it is worth it. After that night, something shifted between them. They started sharing lunches, swapping stories about their childhoods. She told him about her mother, who had taught her to give even when she had nothing. He told her about his father, a man so focused on wealth that he had forgotten how to love. He died before I could tell him I wanted to be different, David said quietly one afternoon. Emily looked at him, realizing that behind the confident smile was a man still haunted by his own loneliness. You are different, she said. You are trying. He smiled faintly. You really believe that, do you? I do. Weeks turned into months. The foundation's projects grew under Emily's careful organization. She created a new initiative, a mobile soup kitchen called Times Open Hands *, that brought meals to people who could not reach shelters. When she presented the idea to the board, her voice trembled at first, but David's encouraging nod gave her strength. The board members approved it unanimously. After the meeting, David found her in the hallway. You were incredible in there, he said, pride in his eyes. That was your idea, not mine. Our idea, she corrected. You believed in me when no one else did. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and the world seemed to hold still. There was something unspoken there, something neither dared to name, but as quickly as it came, David looked away, clearing his throat. "Well," he said lightly, "you better get ready for the launch. The press loves a good success story." Emily smiled, pretending not to notice the way his voice softened when he said her name. That night, as she rode the bus home, she stared out at the city lights and realized her life was no longer about surviving. It was about becoming. She had gone from the girl who gave away her last $10 to a woman helping others rebuild their lives. Yet, in quiet moments, she still thought of David, the man who had changed everything, and yet seemed just as lost as she once was. What she did not know was that David was thinking the same thing, watching her transformation with a mix of admiration and something deeper he could not yet admit. For both of them, kindness had started as a small spark, but now it was becoming something that neither could ignore, a light too strong to hide. The launch of the Open Hands project came faster than anyone expected. By early spring, the Carter Foundation's mobile kitchen was ready to roll out into the city streets, painted in warm colors with the slogan, "Kindness has no price," written across its side. Emily stood beside it on launch day, wearing a simple blue dress and a volunteer badge, her heart pounding with pride. Cameras flashed, reporters crowded around, and David gave his short speech about community and hope. When he turned to thank her publicly, her throat tightened. "This program exists because one woman reminded me that kindness still matters," he said, looking straight at her. The applause that followed felt unreal. Emily smiled, but inside, she was overwhelmed. After the event ended and the crowd thinned, she found herself standing by the truck alone, watching volunteers serve the first meals. She had never imagined her life would look like this. David approached quietly, his hands in his pockets. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it," she corrected, smiling faintly. "You gave me a chance." "You earned it," he replied. For a moment the noise of the city faded. The late afternoon sun painted his face in gold light, and Emily felt something she could not name stir inside her chest. But before either of them could say another word, a sleek black car pulled up by the curb. A tall woman stepped out, dressed sharply in a gray suit. "David," she called, her tone clipped but familiar. David turned, his expression tightening. "Emily, this is Claire Hastings, our board's financial director," he said quickly. Claire gave Emily a brief, polite smile, then turned to David. "We need to talk, privately." Emily took the hint and stepped back, pretending to busy herself with the volunteers, though her ears caught fragments of their conversation. "You are getting too involved with her," Claire said under her breath. "The board is already talking. They think she is a charity case you are parading for good press." "That is not true," David said sharply. "She earned her place." "Maybe so, but perception matters," Claire insisted. "Be careful. The foundation's reputation is fragile." Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. When David returned, his expression was guarded. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly. "Just board politics," he said with a forced smile. "Do not worry about it." But that night, as Emily sat in her small apartment staring at the photo from the launch, her chest ached. Doubt crept in. What if people thought she was there because of him, not because she deserved it? What if she had ruined everything he had built? The next few days at work felt different. Whispers lingered in the hallways, and a few coworkers stopped talking when she entered the break room. She tried to ignore it, burying herself in her work, but the tension was heavy. One afternoon, she overheard two interns whispering near the elevator. "She used to be homeless," one said, "and now she is the boss's favorite. You think that is just coincidence?" Emily's hands shook as she held her files tighter. When she stepped into the elevator, they went silent. David noticed her quietness over the following week. "You have been distant," he said one evening as they reviewed reports. She hesitated, then said, "People think I am here because of you, because you feel sorry for me." His brows furrowed. "Do you believe that?" "I do not know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You changed my life, but I do not want to be someone's project, David." He leaned forward, his tone steady but filled with emotion. "Emily, you are not a project. You are the reason this foundation has life again. Do not let their noise drown out what you have earned." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "Then, promise me something," she said. "If one day this becomes too much, you will tell me the truth, even if it hurts." David nodded slowly. "I promise." The silence that followed was heavy but honest. When Emily left the office that night, the city lights flickered like distant stars. She walked past the reflection of the foundation's logo on the glass doors and saw her own face beside it. For the first time, she wondered if she could stand tall without his shadow. What she did not see was David standing at his window, watching her walk away, his jaw tight. He had promised to tell her the truth, but deep down he knew there was more at stake than she realized because someone inside the board was already planning to test them both. By the end of summer, Emily had become the quiet heart of the Carter Foundation. The Open Hands Project was expanding to new cities, donations were pouring in, and her name began to appear in press releases beside David's. Yet the more visible she became, the more the tension grew behind closed doors. One gray morning, David called an emergency board meeting. When Emily arrived with her files, she could feel the chill in the room. Claire Hastings sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, eyes cold. "Let us begin," Claire said crisply. "The board has raised concerns about recent expenditures, specifically the funds allocated to the Open Hands Project and to Miss Walker's salary." Emily's throat tightened. "My salary? It has doubled in 6 months," Claire replied. "That is highly unusual for a new employee, especially one with no formal background in nonprofit management." David interjected immediately. "It doubled because she took on the responsibilities of 2 coordinators after we lost staff. Every dollar is accounted for." Claire folded her arms. "Still, donors are asking questions. They have seen the photos, the stories about how you rescued her. Some are suggesting favoritism." David's jaw clenched. "This is nonsense." Claire's gaze turned sharp. "Is it? The foundation cannot afford even the hint of scandal. If this relationship, professional or otherwise, compromises our integrity, we all suffer." Emily sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Relationship. The word hung in the air like smoke. David stood abruptly. "There is nothing inappropriate here," he said. "Miss Walker's work speaks for itself." Claire's lips curved in a faint, cold smile. "Then prove it. Effective immediately, I propose that Miss Walker be temporarily suspended pending an internal review." The room erupted in murmurs. Emily felt her stomach drop. She turned to David, who looked furious but helpless. "You cannot be serious," he said. "This is political theater." "It is protocol," Claire replied. "And as financial director, I am within my rights to call for it." Emily's voice finally broke through. "You do not need to protect me," she said quietly. "If my presence hurts the foundation, I will leave." David turned to her sharply. "Emily, no." But she was already gathering her papers, her eyes glistening though she refused to cry. "It is fine," she said. "I just wanted to help. I did not mean to cause trouble." She walked out before anyone could stop her. The sound of the door closing echoed through the boardroom like a final sentence. That night, the city felt colder than ever. Emily sat in a small diner near her old neighborhood, stirring a cup of coffee she could barely afford. Everything she had built, everything she had believed was slipping away again. When her phone buzzed, she saw David's name but could not bring herself to answer. She stared at the screen until it went dark. Across town, David stood by his office window, phone still in his hand. Claire entered quietly. "You did the right thing letting her step back," she said. "We will calm the donors and move forward." David turned, anger burning behind his calm voice. "You think this is about donors? You humiliated someone who represents everything this foundation stands for." "No, David," Claire said, her tone icy. "I protected it from you." The words hit harder than he expected. She turned and left before he could respond. The next morning, headlines began to circulate online. Carter Foundation faces favoritism allegations. Photos of David and Emily at the launch event were everywhere. David's phone buzzed nonstop, but he ignored it all. Instead, he scrolled to Emily's contact and finally sent one message. "Please meet me at the park tonight. I owe you the truth." When Emily read it, her hands trembled. She knew she should delete it and walk away, but something deep inside her, something stubborn and hopeful, made her type back one word: "Okay." That evening, as the sun sank behind the city skyline, the same park where she had once sat hungry and invisible waited for her again. She did not know what he would say, but part of her already knew. This meeting would decide not just their future, but the meaning of everything they had fought for. The air in the park that evening was thick with the scent of rain and freshly cut grass. The same old bench waited under the flickering lamp, the one where Emily had once sat counting her last coins. She arrived early, her heart hammering as she looked around the empty path. When David appeared from across the street, the wind caught his coat. and for a moment he looked like the same lost man from the train station, not the millionaire CEO everyone whispered about. "You came," he said, his voice low. "You asked," she replied. They stood in silence for a moment before he gestured toward the bench. "Can we talk?" She nodded and sat, keeping her hands clasped tightly in her lap. David sat beside her, leaving a respectful space between them. The sound of distant traffic filled the pauses between their words. "I am sorry for what happened," he began. "The board went too far, but I should have protected you better." "It is not your fault," she said quietly. "I knew something like this would happen. People like me are not supposed to be part of worlds like yours." David turned sharply. "Do not say that. You belong wherever kindness is needed, and that is everywhere." Emily shook her head. "You do not understand. I have spent my whole life being told I am not enough. When I met you, I thought maybe I could finally prove that wrong. But now, all anyone sees is pity." His expression softened. "Emily, you never needed to prove anything. Not to me, not to anyone. You changed the way I see the world. Then why did you let them tear it apart?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Because I was trying to protect you," he said. "Claire has been looking for a reason to undermine me for months. If I had fought harder in that meeting, it would have only made things worse." "Worse than losing everything?" she whispered. He looked down at his hands, guilt etched into every line of his face. "You did not lose everything," he said. "Not while I am still standing." She wanted to be angry, but the sincerity in his voice disarmed her. "What does that even mean?" "It means I will not let them silence the truth," he said firmly. "Tomorrow, I am calling a press conference. I am going to clear your name publicly, even if it costs me my position." Her eyes widened. "You cannot do that. You will lose everything." He smiled faintly. "You taught me that sometimes losing everything is the only way to do the right thing." The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotion. The rain began to fall, gentle at first, then steady. David stood and offered her his hand. "Come on," he said. "You will catch a cold." She hesitated, then took it. The warmth of his touch sent a quiet shiver through her. They ran together through the rain until they reached the awning of a closed cafe. They stood there, breathless, dripping wet, staring at each other in the dim light. "You should not have to do this for me," she said. "I am not worth losing your career over." David stepped closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Emily, I am not doing this for you. I am doing this because of you. You reminded me why I started all this, to make a difference, not to protect an image." Her throat tightened. "And what happens after that? When the headlines fade and the board turns against you?" He gave a small, tired laugh. "Then maybe I will finally be free." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain softened to a drizzle, and the streetlights reflected off the wet pavement like broken glass. David looked at her, his expression caught somewhere between exhaustion and admiration. "You once gave me $10 when you had nothing," he said softly. "Now it is my turn to give something back." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "You already did," she said. "You believed in me." He reached up, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. "Then promise me you will keep believing, even when I am not around." She nodded, unable to speak. The sound of thunder rolled in the distance as they stood there, two people bound not by wealth or power, but by something far more fragile and real, the simple, stubborn grace of believing in each other. The next morning, the city awoke to gray skies and flashing headlines. Cameras lined the steps of the Carter Foundation headquarters, reporters calling out questions as David stepped up to the microphone. Emily watched from a distance, standing among the small crowd that had gathered on the sidewalk. Her heart pounded as his voice carried through the cold air. "There have been rumors about favoritism within our organization," he began calmly. "I am here to tell you the truth. The woman at the center of those rumors, Emily Walker, is not a charity case. She is the reason this foundation still stands. Her work has transformed lives, including mine." Flashbulbs burst around him like tiny explosions of light. "If defending integrity means stepping down," David continued, "then I will. But I will not apologize for believing in someone who believed in me first." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Emily felt tears prick her eyes as she listened. In that moment, he was not a CEO defending a scandal. He was a man choosing honesty over reputation. When the conference ended, he turned from the podium and caught her gaze across the crowd. For a second, time stopped. He gave a small nod, quiet, steady, unspoken. She nodded back. Hours later, the news spread everywhere. social media filled with messages of support for both of them. Volunteers posted photos from Open Hands kitchens across the country with the caption "Kindness Wins." Even the board, cornered by public admiration, had no choice but to retract their suspension. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Emily returned to the foundation building for the first time in weeks. The lobby was quiet now, the chaos gone. She hesitated at the elevator, then saw David standing near the window, waiting. He looked exhausted but peaceful. "You should not be here," he said with a faint smile. "You should be resting. You just took on the entire board and the press in one day. And you should not have had to do it," she replied softly. "But thank you." "No," he said. "Thank you for reminding me that good things are worth fighting for." He walked closer, handing her a small envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "A surprise," he said. She opened it and found a photo taken that morning, the two of them standing side by side in front of the Open Hands truck. Beneath it, written in his handwriting, were the words, "The day kindness came full circle." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "You kept the $10 bill all this time," she said. He nodded. "It is framed in my office now, a reminder that value is not measured in money, but in courage." He paused, searching her eyes. "Emily, I do not know what happens next for the foundation, or for me, but I know one thing: I do not want to face any of it without you." Her breath caught. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything," he said. She laughed softly through her tears. "You are terrible at keeping things professional." "I am done being professional," he said, smiling. "I would rather be real." He reached for her hand, and for once, she did not hesitate. Their fingers intertwined, warm against the fading chill. Outside, the city lights blinked on, one by one, like stars returning to the night. Weeks later, Open Hands expanded into 3 new cities. The board reinstated David as executive director after a unanimous vote of confidence. But what mattered most to him was not the title, it was seeing Emily lead the first launch event, her voice strong, her smile radiant. When she finished her speech, he stepped onto the small stage beside her, holding something wrapped in velvet. "I have one more thing to give back," he said quietly. He opened the box to reveal the same $10 bill, now sealed beneath glass and engraved with the words, "Faith changes everything." The crowd erupted in applause, but Emily barely heard them. Tears streamed down her face as he said, "This is not a payment, it is a promise." And then, under the soft lights of the community hall, David knelt on one knee and asked, "Emily Walker, will you walk beside me for real this time?" Her laugh broke through her tears. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes." The crowd cheered, but all Emily could see was the man who once had nothing and the woman who gave everything. The story that began with a $10 act of faith ended with something priceless, a love built not on fortune, but on kindness, courage, and the unshakable belief that one small act can change everything.